know the truth. Expose the lies, study the bloodlines, the aboriginal opinions. Let the world know the truth. Expose the lies, study the bloodlines, the aboriginal tribe. For the Spanish, the Dutch, and the British arrived. Saying we was from Africa, stolen birthright. That's triple, something that a dirty war would do. Claim your nationality of the land, you get screwed. So we studied your background, the treaties you wrote. Fake as history, you ain't go up here on no boat. Frontin' like you indigenous to the land, you disgust me. Tomahawks back in our hands, it's getting ugly. You running around screaming black power. To the cells, to the truth, rivers fell with a bull and high hell. Native Americans, but hurt, can't tell, cause they know damn well the relatives ain't real. Respect the aborigine, this land is all you know, you all. You still a guest, motherfucker. I had one little, two little, three little Indian grandmas, but society keep killing them, telling them. I had one little, two little, three little Indian grandmas, but society keep killing them, telling them. House nigga, real nigga, fake nigga, feel nigga. My skin ain't black, what the deal, nigga? Salute on my else, but it's aborigines. Owners of the land and every goddamn tree and every goddamn sea. Invaders of a cross, step foot on the land and you can step the fuck off. Brave, you gon' make us swing the sacred tomahawk. Fucking around with us with that black console. Fake pics of slave shit, that's the reference. Rape with African blood, you gon' need more evidence. I'm American, Aboriginal, indigenous, Djibouti is latest. That shit is rhetoric, stay woke. Aboriginal, get out. You civil rights acts, all you need, big out. And Stockholm syndrome, mix gets out. Phoenix Moon got the antidote, get that shit out. Me, wow. Rapping about my birthright, fuck a freestyle. Each man, each woman, each child. Black places really Indians indeed now. Man, they indeed now. Honey, dog, got 18 G-Goes. Pilgrims get big gold, but Phoenix and Beast Mode. Bringing my peoples out of the sleep mode. We ain't black, colors, Africans, or Negroes. I had one little, two little, three little Indian grandmas, but society keep killing them, telling them. I had one little, two little, three little Indian grandmas, but society keep killing them, telling them.
Osio, Halito, Sego. What's happening, beloved ones? It's a beautiful day in Indian country. Happy American Indian Heritage Month. Y'all know what it is. Got my beloved cousin Tasha, she here, and our beloved Dr. Fatou Diara. She is back. More DNA. Don't shoot the messenger. Let's get the facts. DNA conversations are not the same since Dr. Fatou came back. They were different back 3-4 years ago when she was here, but now, new and improved situation, new information, new updates. This is a conversation that you might want to call your other DNA experts to. I sent the last video to Saneter. Let's see if any of those experts over there, Garfield, any of them experts want to pull up. We'll see. Probably not, but they've been definitely, we've extended the invitation because they're always speaking about DNA. Not necessarily from a biased perspective, but from the one that they already know. Here it is. We got Dr. Fatou back. I'm super excited. Again, happy American Indian Heritage Month. And if you didn't know, now you know. What's up, y'all beautiful ones? Hey, Tasha. Hey, Dr. Fatou.
Hey, Chama Wingapo, everyone.
Hey.
How y'all doing tonight?
Doing well. Thank you. Fatou, I think your mic is on mute. You come off whenever you are ready. Y'all got to see the last one. Y'all got to see it. Thank you, Library. Y'all got to listen to the last one. You might even want to go back to the first one and see what's changed. The first video we did back in maybe 2017, 2018. Chock full of information too. Of course, that carried us over for a very long time, right? Now we have the updated situation, and don't shoot the messenger. Let's get this information, have these conversations. I'm excited. There's also a dissertation by brother Tyrone Lewis Cannon. Listen, we're going to unpack this. It's available. It's actually published, so you'll be able to read that at your leisure regarding Albert Perry. I'm excited. I do hope that Dr. Tracy McCarthy pulls up as well. She's got something she's got going on, and I'm going to tell y'all, I was interested. She got my full attention as well. And we're just going to approach it. We're not going to be intimidated by it. We're absolutely going to approach it. We're going to dissect it, and we're going to deal with science head on. Okay, so I just wanted to say that. Dr. Fatou, are you ready, dear? How are you?
I'm fine. I'm fine.
Good. Thank you so much for coming back. Definitely, guys, if you have any questions, save them for, when it's time and she's available to ask questions. If you have them, write them down, and let's see what we can come up with. Fatou, happy American Indian Heritage Month.
Same to you.
Thank you. So what you got for us today?
Well, I have a mixture of things. I have something for a little bit of everyone, actually, and it's just taking a look at different oracles, GEDmatch. I have something like sequencing, and just showing different patterns when we upload our raw data to these different oracles. And what I'm showing, and I want the audience to understand that I'm not, when I discuss these different nations, by no means am I suggesting that we are any of these nations, but it's just another way of substantiating that we were here from ancient times. And that's why we show markers of people that came in, because I understand from a little birdie that when I talk about Berbers or these other groups coming in, they were only one of several groups that came in and intermingled with us. People somehow or another, some people, not everyone, will think maybe that's my underhanded way of saying that we are Moors. No, I'm not saying we're any of that. We are an indigenous people to the Americas. There's a lot of genetic evidence of that. I always tell your audience that I've learned a lot, and I continue to learn a lot from Tyrone Lewis Cannon. And we're our own people, okay? I'm not identifying our people with Moors, Hebrews, with nobody else, okay? I'm not here to step on anybody's toes if that's how they choose to identify or anybody's belief systems. But what I'm saying is that there is genetic evidence that these people came here, that they intermingled with us among several other people. And if I talk about that or I show it, it's not to, in a slick way, insinuate we are those people, but it's if anything, I'm showing that we had to be here for those people to come here and mix with us. So obviously, we were here longer than the 400 years that's pushed onto us. And that's all I'm showing. I'm not pushing the out of Africa theory. I don't personally believe in the out of Africa theory. So I just need your audience to understand, let's be on the same wavelength. So nobody needs to overread into anything. I'm just talking about the different things that I see. A friend of mine who was listening, she's Jamaican, and she, felt like I'm not discussing the Caribbean people enough. And I see certain patterns with Caribbean people's DNA. I look at a lot of different DNA on people from the Americas, and it gives me a lot of insight, and it's consistent with history. So I have some of that to show. So I have a little bit of something for everyone.
Fantastic. Yes, I had a lot of my Caribbean people definitely asking if there was any information or details that you can, perhaps drop to point them in the right direction. Of course, that would, definitely trying to get people motivated to, of course, use genealogy as well. And how to be able to use the genealogy in conjunction with the blood test, the DNA test, that they have taken, and how to be able to interpret that.
Mm-hmm.
But excited. Whenever you're ready, darling, the floor is yours.
All right. So let me put up my first slide. Wait, hold on here.
All right, thank you for the super chat, Shrugs.
Thank you, beloved.
Hold on, just a minute. I want to show this to you. Okay, does your audience see this? Or do you see it?
Okay, 1 second. Let me put it up. Yeah, there it is. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you last week, or was it 2 weeks ago, you asked a question about Albert Perry.
Yes.
Okay, Albert Perry, and the fact that he has the oldest Y paternal haplogroup on this planet. He's the father of all fathers. Okay, now this is basically a piece, a snippet that I took from Tyrone Lewis Cannon. He did a dissension, okay, a dissertation with the team that discovered the Albert Perry haplogroup, the A00. And basically what he showed in this diagram was that Albert Perry's DNA was actually 11 mutational steps away from the African similar group, which proved it was not the same. And they did not give him an answer. They actually left the combo.
So wait a minute. So for the 11 people that they're saying match Albert Perry, they don't exactly match him. They're 11 different genetic steps away.
Exactly.
Huh. Okay. All right.
And if your audience wants to read more about it, they can just put a Google search. Tyrone Lewis Cannon, his dissertation with Albert Perry Y chromosome. It's right there. And they actually left it wasn't even an argument. It was just a question based on what his evidence showed, and they left it. They dismissed it and left it, but they could not answer. Okay, but it is not the same.
So is it showing that it's older or it's just different?
Well, the implication is that it's showing it's different, but it is definitely older because they had already known about the Cameroon Mbo people, but they did not know it was older until they matched it to Albert Perry's.
Oh, so basically the people in Cameroon were tested first.
Yes, but they couldn't age it.
Oh, and then Albert Perry comes along. That's and right. He's aged even ahead of those people that they didn't have an age.
But they're trying to say it's the same, but it is not the same.
Absolutely fascinating.
Okay. All right. So I'm a little clumsy with this. Do I press stop screen? Because I want to go to the next one.
If you have it up already, you can just go to the next one. But if you need to stop and start again, you do whatever you feel comfortable with.
Okay, got it. All right. So. All righty. All righty. So you see the screen. It's a study that was done on the Wampanoag tribe.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So what I really wanted your audience to see with this screen is that this is the descendants of the Seekonk Wampanoag tribe that participated in a genetic study. And if you look at the findings, you would see that the majority of the mitochondrial DNA that was found, they termed it mitochondrial L. They called it African. Okay. Now, what I'm trying to point out is not that it's African, and the major Y haplogroup was the E1B1A. They also termed that African. It's not because it's African. I want them to realize that these are established people who already know their identities. There's no confusion, and that is their ancestral composition. Okay, that is how they determine their ancestral composition. So they have a similar pattern to so-called African Americans. That's what I wanted your audience to understand. Okay, so they don't have a different pattern from your African American, I say that in quotes, who take these genetic studies. That's what I wanted to show with that screen. Okay. Now, a lot of times when we do these DNA tests, we get tiny little markers. I spoke 2 weeks ago about the Southeast Asian markers with regard to Austronesians and how important that is, especially that's the pattern that's shown overwhelmingly in people who are North American Aborigines, misnomered African Americans. But I wanted to talk about some of the other markers that we see in various tests. Okay, so I'm going to show you first where these markers are coming from. Okay. Do you see that screen?
Yes.
Okay. That's a person from an indigenous tribe in Canada. I'm not sure if this person is a Mi'kmaq or who this person is, but if you notice that pattern, you see that they have North Asian, Manchurian, Mongolian. We're not Manchurian, we're not Mongolian, but the reality is that these people migrated here. All right. Okay, so I'm going to show you something.
So, Dr. Fatou, do you think it's safe to say, compared to the Wampanoag, I know we spoke about it last time, compared to the Wampanoag DNA results, that the African markers that they're showing on the DNA results are actually American Indian markers?
They're American Indian markers. Those are indigenous. Those are indigenous markers. What they're terming African is based on ancestral informative markers. Those are markers found on melanocytes that we share with continental Africans. Just like East Asians and Native Americans have become, they have become divergent populations, but they share things in common. So they would trigger the same response on test, but they're not the same. It's the same thing with us. So they're labeling those that DNA African, but those people are not African. What I'm showing here is a person who's from North America, African American, so-called African American, and you see the same tiny markers, Manchurian and Mongolian. Now, this is an indigenous person who comes from North Carolina, Virginia area. I'm just showing how we ended up taking in the markers of people who migrated. That's what I'm showing. Okay. And this area here, I'm going to deal with this as well, because we also get this on 23andMe with the broadly central and South Asian. We'll see these as Uzbekistan on some tests, the area of Afghanistan. And this came in through the Ottoman Empire. Those markers also came in indirectly through Moors, and they came in because of the Umayyad Empire, and that DNA spread to North Africa, went into Spain. So there's different ways we inherited it. We're not these people, but we had to be here to get those markers. That's all I'm pointing out. You understand? So as you can see with the Canadian native, they're further north. So they had more Manchurian and North Asian DNA. We're further south. And we're not Manchurians, nor are we Mongolians, but we do get tiny DNA markers. So that's the pattern that I'm showing. Okay. Okay. Do you see this? The macro haplogroup L?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Hold on. Okay, I'm gonna jump here to the Americans. I have to apologize to your audience. I'm a little clumsy with this. Now I think I have the hang of this so we can move a little faster. This is right in Wikipedia. So I'm going to show you, and I've told a few people about this. If you go to Wikipedia and you look up macro haplogroup L, mitochondrial DNA L, which is called mitochondrial Eve, you'll see if you go under the title of the Americas, right here, they literally admit it to you. Haplogroup L lineages are found in the African diaspora of the Americas, as well as indigenous Americans with a small I, and they leave it right there.
You said with a small I. I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, I noticed that. They not even a big I, a small I. Haplogroup L lineages are predominant among African Americans, Afro-Caribbeans, Brazil. Report that 85%. Yeah. You can read the rest of this, but they just threw that in here. Notice they didn't say Native Americans, because if you look up Native American mitochondrial haplogroups, what do you read? A, B, C, and D. Not L.
Wow.
So who are the indigenous Americans?
And then it says African diaspora. It doesn't say Africans either.
Right.
With the Nahal, you see the 8% too down there in Mexico. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Okay, hold on. Well, let me just say something about this. The people that we term Native American, I mean, it's not a secret to your audience that they have links to Siberia. And there are studies showing this. I don't believe I have the slide, but when you look at our DNA as well, we will have tiny links to the Altai region of Siberia as well. Again, we're not Siberians, we're not Native Americans, but how did we get the markers? So that's, again, what I'm pointing out. Hold on. This was the, I talked about this 2 weeks ago. This was the study done on the St. David from Bermuda Island, people who were descendants of the Pequot warriors who were carried there during the King Philip's War. And again, if you look at most of their mitochondrial DNAs, as well as their Y chromosome haplotypes, majority were labeled African in the small minority, West Eurasian or European. Okay, so again, when you're talking about Eastern woodland descendants, the majority of our ancestral composition, this is what it will be categorized as. And it's a misnomer. But I just wanted to first establish that with the audience, that there are studies done on people without a shadow of a doubt who know their origins, and they get the same results we do. Okay.
Now, someone just asked, does that imply that those woodland Indians are related to those West Africans?
No, because they don't have short tandem repeats that are even remotely similar or related. They don't match them. Okay, I'm bringing this up because a lot of your audience, if they read genetic discussions with regard to so-called African Americans, and I say African Americans from North America, okay, so-called African Americans, a common explanation for why we have Southeast Asian markers is attributed to African enslaved ancestors from Madagascar. Okay, but that's garbage because the data shows that for the imported, number one, it wasn't that many imported Africans to North America. We all know this. It was under 400,000. And when you're talking about from Madagascar, this is what I wanted to show. It was 4,800. But 90% of us have those markers. So you cannot get 90% of us with Southeast Asian markers. When you add Southeast Asian with Native American markers, you're pushing it up to almost 100% of us in North America. The Southeast Asian markers alone, which are Austronesian markers, we're at about 90%. You're not going to get that from 4,800 people from Madagascar. So this is what I'm showing. So anybody that says that, point this out to them. 4,800 people cannot give 40 million people those markers.
So now let me ask the question. Now this is what we have after they only use, what is it, 0.001%, which you lose each generation. So let's say they were able to test me. test my mother, test my grandmother, and my great grandmother.
Mhm.
We would all have different things within that DNA, right? Like it would be a different genetic trail or random different things that they would pick up that maybe I don't have, maybe my mother doesn't have.
It is random, but it's the same genes recombining. You understand? I don't know if I'm answering your question.
Okay, so if they being able to determine this with that small percentage, and they say that you lose like 50% of the actual data each generation, they're only testing me. But what if they were able to test me, my mother, and let's say my grandmother? How different would it be if you spread it all out? How different would it be? Considering that we all pick up random different things, right, that the other may not have. What would be significantly stronger or lessen from my grandmother than, let's say, me and my mom?
Nothing, because you all come out of the same population.
Okay.
That's why we were able to preserve those markers. Because despite some mixture, we were still mixing among ourselves primarily. Okay. Now, you see that, right? This is from sequencing. This is a Puerto Rican mestizo who has different mixtures, native Mongoloid, a substantial amount of Spaniard, indigenous markers, African. Okay, so this is map my genes Martin map of where his DNA is localized all over the planet. Okay, and I wanted to show this so the audience can see the reference. All right, so I'm not pulling this out of somewhere. Okay, so you'll see he has strong mapping in the Iberian Peninsula. You'll see here the Canary Islands, and you see pretty much all over Europe, the Levant area, Yemen, little bits and pieces over here in South America, Mexico. And these are Native American, Mesoamerican individuals, okay? Chippewa up here, and Mexicans over here. Okay, that's so-called African-American population, Denver. It's very tiny over here. All right, now I'm showing this for a reason. Okay, hold on. Okay, this is someone from North America. Okay, that's the current map my genes for them. And I wanted to show your audience this right here is where you have a lot of gene mapping. Okay, now this would be the area of the Canary Islands. This is in the area of Algeria. Okay, all righty. Now, I can't do it here because I took a screenshot of this, but when I expanded this, there were tiny markers here. Now, it wasn't as pronounced as with the mestizo from Puerto Rico, but I'm showing them. You see, there's some mapping here as well. Okay. By the way, this is our archeogenetics, right? This is archeogenetics.
So mapping that's the archeogenetic portion of it.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yes. Hold on. I need to go back. Hold on. Because I want to show and contrast something. This is the archeogenetics of a person from Jamaica. And what I noticed is that they have very pronounced matching to the Peruvian sites. Hold on. Let me see. Is this his? Yes. You will see he's very genetically close to Brazil, ancient Argentina. Okay. Peru.
Is that someone from the Caribbean, you said?
Yes, this person is from Jamaica. And that's something I've noticed with the Caribbean people. When I look at their archeogenetics, they have closer matches to ancient South America.
Interesting, like the Patagonians. And you say this, and I have like pictures in antiquity of Patagonians, and they look like Rastas with dreadlocks and everything. It's incredible. Men, women, and children.
Okay, so I'm going to show the pattern. This is someone from Jamaica. Okay, now, this is someone from North America. Okay, so if you notice, this becomes more prominent. And let me show the archeogenetic map, the actual list with this. Okay. So you can see here, this person maps closer to the Canary Guanches, which were people who were related to ancient Berbers. Okay, hold on. You can see Canary, Ethiopia, which is Guanches, Hungary. These are ancient sites. Ibermarusians, who were the ancient indigenous people of North Africa. Okay, I'm not calling anybody Moors, but I'm showing you. Okay, these people came in and intermarried with individuals. Same thing. You can see very close. All right. You see the same thing here. You even see these are Natufians in Israel, Hungary. And then you can see the Peru is there, but it's further distance compared to the people from the Caribbean. And that's a pattern. It's not just these individuals. That's a pattern that I've noticed. So we match further from the people of Peru, and the people in the Caribbean
match closer.
And it's like an opposite. And if you just think about it genetically, that, I mean, when you just look at not genetically, geographically, that just makes sense. If you just look at the maps. This is also from a Jamaican, and this is the MDLP 22. And if you look, you will see his secondary populations. I want the people to pay close attention to this, because this is a part of history. This during the 1490s, you had a dispersion of the Jews, and you had a dispersion of the Moors, and especially Sephardic Jews. Okay, and you can see here all of this: Sardinia, Iberia, Portuguese. You even see Lumbee. Okay, now Lumbee is us, and Lumbee is they're a state recognized tribe in North Carolina, and they're basically an amalgamated tribe of Algonquian, Siouan, and Iroquoian tribes amalgamated, and they have a lot of Sephardic Jewish lineage, so they've intermingled among themselves a lot, and so they've become, so the GEDmatch team have allowed them to have their own genetic group. And you will see Lumbee for many so-called African Americans pop up in their secondary populations, and that's because we derive from similar groups: Algonquian, Iroquoian groups, Siouan groups. Okay, so we know that during the wars on the East Coast, they took many of the captured indigenous men and they sent them to the Caribbean. The Caribbean was a dumping ground for many of them. And so this reflects that here. But this also reflects what was happening in the 1490s as well. Okay.
Yeah, the Basque up towards the top. The Ojibwe people claim that some other people migrated over there and became the Basque as well. So that's interesting that that's coming up on a Jamaican person's DNA result.
Right. But see, I want to go back then to this map. So then this map should make sense because we tend to see this pattern with North American people. Okay. And this is an archeogenetic map. Okay. All right. This is another Jamaican. I believe this is the Eurogenes. And if you look at his secondary populations, you'll see, again, this is reflecting what happened in the 1490s. Nothing recent.
Wow, you said nothing recent?
No, that's not reflecting anything recent. Okay. I actually presented that book a couple of years ago. And this deals with a lot of the surnames that we have. A lot of our surnames are found in here. And that's because, and you know, a lot of our surnames did not come from any kind of plantation owners. That's been talked about. A lot of these surnames came from the 1500s and originated with many of the crypto Jews and Moors that went there during the 1490s. And you will see many of our surnames there. Okay. This is the MDLP 22 result of actual Lumbee person who allowed me to look at his data. And as you can see, because he is a Lumbee and they do allow them to have their own genetic group, that's the first group that pops up. Okay. Now, hold on. So I already talked about this. The Lumbee are an amalgamation of Siouan, Algonquin, and Iroquois-speaking tribes. Okay. Now this is the same Lumbee. Using the MDLP 16, you can see the first group that pops up. Now the MDLP 16 on the GED match actually gives so-called African Americans from North America our own genetic group. And it's interesting to look at it. Now, using that particular oracle, look at the first population the Lumbee man matches to, okay? So that in itself should tell us who we are. You understand?
I do now. You just simplified it for dummies, I'm telling you.
Right. Now, this is my uncle's. So this is the Lumbee man. That's my uncle. Both of them match the Afro-American sample population on the MDLP 16. So right then and there, you know that the Lumbee has a lot of genetic ties with my uncle and vice versa. They're the same people. That's the point. Okay. This is the Martin Map My Genes of someone from the Caribbean. All right. There was a lot of pre-Columbian intermixtures with people from the region of Nigeria. So this is not a surprise. And this is something that I tend to see. If a person has a lot of Caribbean ancestry, even those of us from North America, that circle tends to be bigger. You can see there's also a big circle here. That's the Afro-American Denver population sample. And you can see there's also gene mapping with people in Mexico and all throughout Europe. Okay. I showed that before. Okay. Okay, let me get out of this because there's something. All right, hold on.
Got an interesting question while you're looking, Fatou. Someone says, so the Nigerians have American ancestry low key?
I've looked at Nigerian samples, I've looked at Ghanaian samples, and they do have tiny Mesoamerican markers, South American markers. There was some crossing, but they're still their own population, which is distinct from ours. Absolutely. But I've seen their genetic tests of fewer, and I've seen some of them with tiny Mesoamerican markers and South American native markers, Mongoloid markers. So if they would have Mesoamerican markers and South American Mongol markers, then it stands to reason they would have some of our markers. Absolutely. It's just that our DNA is being mislabeled African.
This is so fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So some of your listening audience know about My True Ancestry. It's a fun site. You know, it's an archeogenetic site. You upload your DNA to it. They have all these ancient sites all over the planet, and you get to see the site you're matched to. This is a particular site at the Lower Canada area. And this particular site, I believe this is the 1640. Let me see. Hold on. Yes. Yes, this is from the Iroquois tribe, St. Lawrence River, 1550 AD. And as you can see, when they did their ancestral composition, they were a mixture of the Aztec and the Ghaznavid dynasty. Now, for those of us that play with this site, if you look at your matches, you will see that we share genetic matches with these individuals, with these empires, okay? Let me show here. And you can see this was the area of the Ghaznavid Empire. And if you go back, hold on, I want to show it so your audience can see. what I was trying to show is that for those of us that get the North, Central Asian, a little bit of Central Asia, that's some of what we're looking at. Now, in Afghanistan, Pakistan, some of us get tiny North India. That's the area we're looking at. So some of these samples that have these mixtures, it's reflected in the results that we get in 23andMe as well. That's what I'm trying to show. I was just trying to show that. Go back to that slide. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. Okay, but not this. This is something else. Here, right here. You see the area? This is actually my uncle's. Do you guys see this?
Yes, we can. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure. All righty. Anybody have any questions?
I'm sure they do. Do any of you have any questions you'd like to ask? Put them in the chat and we can definitely get some questions answered. Don't they wear the tar bush fez out there like the Olmec King statue heads? I'm not sure. It's a good question, but I'm not sure. People are giving you shout outs, Fatou. They are thanking you, giving you all your flowers and accolades. I have people here. I just want to say shout out to the doctor. Yes.
Yeah, hi. I see my partner, one of my partners there, who we discussed DNA gematria.
Absolutely wonderful. I could drop the link if they'd like to come up and expound. Your guest, I would certainly do so. Would you like? Is that okay?
Yeah, he's very knowledgeable when it comes to DNA.
Gematria, I'm going to send the link. You are more than welcome to come up here and join Dr. Fatou. Any friend or colleague of hers is certainly one of mine. Please join us if you like. I dropped the link in the chat for you, Gematria Wizard. Thank you, Ms. Antoinette. Wado, beloved, thank you so much. Gematria Wizard, if you click that link, it'll bring you in here and you can certainly come on stage as well. You can cover your camera or not, but if you hit the mute button on and off, you'll be able to speak and hear us. So I'll put that down if you'd like to come up. What are some good sites that don't charge lots of money to analyze your uploaded data?
Yeah, I don't think any of it is that expensive. My true ancestry is fairly cheap, and it actually is a pretty good site. It's very insightful. You get to, I look at different people's DNA, so I get to see. I think it's pretty accurate. I uploaded some Ghanaian relatives' DNA up to it. Now, here's the thing that's interesting. The West Africans that participate get the same matches we get, but they don't actually get chromosome matches. Like they don't get the genetic matches. So they'll get a match, so it'll pinch it, but they will get 0%, whereas we'll get 2, 3, 4%. We'll actually match these other nations. Like we'll match the nations in the Mediterranean, the Turks. We'll match all of these nations. The Tyrone Basin. Someone pointed out how there was an article recently on Tyrone Basin from China, how they were also some ancestors for the Native Americans. Well, we matched the Tyrone Basin mummies as well, and that shows in my true ancestry. But when you upload West Africans' DNA, they will match all these sites, but then they don't get the matching genetic markers. So it shows you that what they're picking up is the ancestral informative markers. So they'll pinch these same sites, but then when you look for actual proof of shared DNA, it will be with us, not with them. They will get some shared DNA with some of the Ibermarusian sites. You might see some sharing of the DNA. That just makes sense because that's just right there in their territory. But when it comes to, let's say, the ancient Greeks, we will actually have genetic markers to all those nations. And that goes back to what we talked about. Jack Forbes talked about the Algonquian discovery and how Algonquian people were seafarers and they went all into Europe. Well, we have the genetic tiny markers in all those ancient sites, the Minoans, and it shows there on My True Ancestry. It's actually fun, but it's very educational and it's consistent with history. If I showed all of this, it would be a little bit too, for your audience, because I'm not moving fast here with showing the slides. I apologize for that, but I could easily show it. Now, Barry Fell is, I don't know if your audience heard of him, but Barry Fell.
I've never heard of him.
Okay, well, let me identify him properly. Hold on. I believe he was an archaeologist. And Barry Fell talked about Bronze Age Europeans migrating into North America. Barry Fell? Okay.
Yeah, I'm familiar with him. He did a couple of books on ancient America, I believe.
Yes, exactly. Well, what I was showing by looking at the archeogenetics and looking at that mapping of people from North America, we matched those sites in Europe very strongly. Okay. And just like the people from the Caribbean matched the sites in South America very strongly.
Yeah, there recently was an article about Stonehenge, and now they're saying that Stonehenge was built by foreigners who entered the island and not the actual indigenous Britons. Have you seen that article?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, so they're saying that whole area wasn't even built by the Britons. It's another group came in, and now they're trying to identify that group. But like you were just saying, we know we have stories from the Algonquin people that we came over to Europe and in Northern Africa.
Right. I've actually seen that, what you're talking about, Tasha, about them saying that outsiders actually put that together.
If anybody's familiar with Otzi, the 5,000-year-old mummy that was discovered in the Alps.
The Swiss Alps?
Otzi, he's a 5,000-year-old mummy. I'm saying mummy. Hold on. Let me see if I can pull up a picture of him. Hold on real quick. Because I want to talk about Otzi. Because for many of us that do My True Ancestry, a lot of us match Otzi. I know that I get him as a deep dive. My mother gets him as a deep dive, and all of my cousins and my uncle. We all get him as a deep dive. And you will find many of the people in the Mediterranean get Otzi as a deep dive as well. Hold on.
Peace to the family. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, hey, how you doing, Fatou?
Hey,
How you
welcome.
doing? How are you?
We are well. Thank you for joining us.
I appreciate being here. I just want to send a shout out to all of you, especially the doctor. And, thank you for having me on. And she's very knowledgeable, and I'm just sitting back listening.
Fantastic. Yes, she is very knowledgeable. Fantastic. Thank you.
I'm going to show your audience a picture of Otzi right here. That's a picture of Otzi.
Oh my.
Hold on. He was found even with tattoos.
No.
A lot of us match Otzi. If you were to look at Otzi's ancestral composition, you will see that it's very similar to ours. And you know what? Let me show it. Let me show it. And I find it very interesting. Hold on. So those of you who have GEDmatch, all you do is go to the archeogenetics section. And if you look at those ancient, the archaic matches, they are assigned a JKIT number. So we're going to look up Otzi's right here. Hold on. And while I'm looking for that, does anyone have any questions?
Any other questions here in the chat? You certainly can pose your questions. And if you can't think of it now, just write it down so the next time she asks, you'll be able to spit it out.
Mm-hmm. Well, they claim that Otzi is closest to the people of Sardinia. The people of Sardinia are considered probably to contain some of the oldest European populations. DNA is in the Sardinians. So a lot of our people will notice they get Sardinia, even if it's 1% on these ancestry DNA updates. And I don't necessarily think it's because you will have Sardinian ancestry, or it's more or less picking old European DNA. That's from just going back and forth.
Mr. Walter asked, can these tests take us back to the origins of people?
I don't think so. It's funny because they used to have him, and I don't notice him anymore. He doesn't seem to be part of the archeogenetic site. Interesting. Mm-hmm. Unless I'm overlooking it.
We have Mr.
I found
Wood.
it. F99815. I found it.
Okay, I'll wait till after you present that to ask that question.
Mm-hmm. I found it.
I guess that question would be for me too, for Paul McGlory. He's asking if you would be able to expound on skin tags and flesh molds that we have. The older I get, the more I have. My entire family has them. Mine too. I definitely have them. Um, I don't remember if they were flat before, but I know as I got older, like right by the corner of my eyes, thinking that I was rubbing my skin off because they're moles. I remember my grandmother had several, um, and one that she actually, I think she had it removed from her nose. But I noticed that I am becoming have moles too now that I'm getting older as well. And I even noticed my daughter said that she's starting to get them as well, and she's almost 30.
Yeah, that's very genetic. These moles, and they're found. I mean, they're found all over the planet. You find them among Asians, Amerindians, Africans. They're very prominent in the Caribbean. I was kind of having a debate with one of my friends to kind of find out who gave them to who. Was it found among the North Americans and the Caribbeans and the South Americans? You know, did we just all have them and the same amount, or was one population where you find it the most? I mean, personally, it's pretty much found all over the planet. Okay, these moles, but naturally you see these moles and people from this side of the hemisphere predominantly. And I noticed that the people from the Caribbean seem to have it more than we do. And I noticed those of us with more Caribbean lineage, we tend to have it because this is just a personal observation. People who belong to the tribes who tend to have less Caribbean admixtures, they don't have it as much as the people who are outside of the tribes who have more enslaved lineage. And we know that enslaved lineage brought in a lot of the Caribbean people. So my conclusion is that a lot of that, I'm not saying all of it, okay, because it's a global phenomenon, but it seems that a lot of that came from the Caribbean. That's just my take on it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Someone also asked, can you use tea tree oil to naturally remove them?
That I don't know. I'm not sure how to remove them. If they get big enough, I've had family members go to a dermatologist and have them laser it off with no issues at all. They usually have to be lasered off.
We have another question. Cousin Ishmael says, if the Perry family has cousins, why is the marker more prevalent in America?
It's from America. It's not from Africa. It wasn't found in Africa. In fact, it was different. It was 11 mutational steps different from the one in Cameroon. That wasn't accurate when they said that it was African. And Tyrone proved that it was actually genetically different. And when he brought that up, they bowed out of it with hostility. And he just posed the question as to why it was being labeled African when it was not genetically similar to the African one.
That's amazing. And also there's 11 mutations, right?
Right.
11 different mutations found in those people that they say have the same markers that were found in Cameroon. But those Cameroonians markers changed significantly where Albert Perry, and she indicated that they couldn't date the 11 people in Cameroon until they actually found Albert Perry, who predates the 11 Cameroonians with those genetic changes separate from what he has.
Right.
Now, Dr. Fatou, do you know if those people in Cameroon are a stationary group of people or they are nomadic? Because I know some of those tribes are from other places. And they try to use these DNA tests to place us in some place where the people who live there aren't even originally from there. Do you know about the Cameroonian people?
I know some Cameroonian tribes themselves speak of migrating from the east. Many of the African tribes speak of migrating from the north and from the east. Um, that's very common for many of them. I know that the Akans of Ghana only came down into Ghana around the 10th century. They migrated from the north. And this is why when you look at their genetic markers and you map it, it matches and it maps all into the East Africa and the Arabian Peninsula, because they migrated down and they migrated into West Africa. This is what I wanted to show. This is Otzi's. This is his breakdown. You will notice the North Atlantic, the Baltic, the Western Mediterranean, West Asian, Eastern Mediterranean. I want the audience to pay attention to this. The Sub-Saharan African, the Northeast African, Oceanic, the Amerindian, Siberian, East Asian, South Asian. Now pay attention to this because I want the audience to see something here.
Now I have someone ask, quick side yellow. Our pig's skin pigment changes during the seasons, dark in the summer and light in the winter. Is that the result of indigenous genes adapting because of the environment?
We all adapt because of the environment. I mean, everything on the planet ultimately adapts because of the environment. I don't think that's exclusive to our people just because we're indigenous to this landmass. Okay, notice a similar type of pattern. This is from someone who's from North America, an American Aborigine, misnomered African American. Notice the same pattern to Otzi.
Wow.
Just different percentages as to be expected. Which makes sense because I use this person also. I was showing this person's archeogenetic map with the Map My Genes archeogenetic site, and they had close matches to the old European sites. And also deep dive to Otzi on the My True Ancestry. So, you know, I'm not saying we're Europeans. I'm not saying we're Moors. I'm not saying we're Mongols. I'm not saying we're Manchurians. I'm just showing the intermixtures, and all of that just supports that we were here. That's all I'm doing.
Well, we have the records absolutely proving that. We have some Europeans that mixed in with our indigenous people. It kind of all makes sense.
Somebody is asking, I heard a Gambian say many people in West Africa migrated from Arabia and Europe. Are you familiar with that? I would say some. The Arabian Peninsula, yeah, they're the same people, really. They're similar. I mean, there's different African families. When you look at my true ancestry, I'm going to point this out. This is just something that I found rather interesting. We actually had matches to ancient Nubia, but my West African family members did not match ancient Nubia, but we actually matched them. I found that actually quite interesting.
So you're saying your mom's side matched ancient Nubia and not your dad's West African family?
Yep. Now, when I looked at the ancestral composition, I think it's related to the fact that the Nubian samples were more related to North African Moroccans. Okay, and remember, we have a lot of ancient intermixtures with ancient Ibermarusians. Okay, I'm not saying we're Moors, so please do not come behind me and say I'm trying to be slick and push any kind of doctrine. But here's the reality, and I got to say this to your audience, whether you like it or not, people came in and intermarried with us. I'm not telling anybody here to identify with anybody that came in and intermarried with you. All right, I'm not pushing any kind of doctrine, but the reality is, if you just look at the map, ancient Berbers, North Africans came in and intermarried with us. It's not my fault. You have people that want to identify with that and totally overlook the fact that there was a people here already established. You can't, the DNA does not lie. I mean, we do have genetic markers to those people, but those are not the only people we have genetic markers to. And those markers don't over dominate who we are. But I have to put that disclaimer in because, you know, I know some people have a visceral reaction and I understand where it's coming from. Okay. But if I'm talking about genetic markers and it is what it is, that doesn't mean that's what I'm saying we are. Okay.
So someone else had a good question. They asked basically, she said she's wondering who are the people that they are using for the DNA test to say that we are West African. She's talking
That's
about
a
the
good
database.
that's actually a very good question. If you look at Tyrone Lewis Cannon's, he actually did an extensive dissertation, and he looked at the samples of for example, the Yoruba samples, found out it was the Saro people they were using who were migrants from Sierra Leone, who were basically Afro-American people, really, who are indigenous, who relocated to Sierra Leone, and then from there went into Nigeria, and that's who they were using. So then when you ended up matching them, of course, it turns out you're matching to Yoruba people. He actually put that together.
Wait, so you're saying people from America who went to Sierra Leone are the people that are using for the Yoruba results?
Yes, according to his research, he said they were using them because it was a people called Saro, Saro, and they were using them as their sample population. Just like they will use Sierra Leone and they would mix that with Ghana. For the 23andMe, they somehow or another merged Ghanaians with Sierra Leone, and those are two different people. And yet we know many people from Sierra Leone came from both America and the Caribbean. So
yeah, that's very interesting because I have neighbors from Sierra Leone and they have some of those molds and they don't look like other people from Sierra Leone. So I could tell that there were different, different tribes and different groups of people.
Right. Well, someone is saying anyone could be a Moor, but for the purposes of DNA, I'm specifically talking about the people, the indigenous people of North Africa. I don't mean it in terms of Moor, meaning like dark skin, Black, I'm specifically talking about an ethnic group in North Africa, west of Egypt, who are Berbers, who are a type of African people. Somebody said my sister stepdad from there, and he says they indigenous to here. His family migrated to Africa. I don't know.
What's that, Sierra Leone? Someone migrated there?
Yes, that's what she was saying, that they claim that they are indigenous to America and they migrated to Sierra Leone. That's what she's saying.
Yeah, you always have to. Yeah, absolutely. Somebody's saying with all the data, you still got to compare it with genealogy and accurate history. Absolutely. For me, DNA is it is entertaining, but it doesn't trump genealogy. I never want people to ever think DNA should ever trump genealogy. But what's nice is to see history and genealogy confirmed by the DNA. Okay.
Someone said, I never see those ancestry DNA tests match us to Liberians and Sierra Leoneans. Another reason I knew something ain't right with those tests.
Right. That's why, if you notice in the Ghana category, they have it mixed with Sierra Leone. So then you get a certain percentage of Ghana, but then it's mixed with Sierra Leone. So.
Fascinating. Any other questions in the audience? Okay. Let me see. I think beloved Cherokee said, Peasy said, what are your thoughts on deoxyetheric acid, DEA?
No thoughts. I don't even know what it is.
No thoughts. She's unaware of what it is. I'm unfamiliar too, Peasy.
There is Moorish DNA, Damien. If Moors are the Berbers, then they have their own unique genetic pattern. All people have a genetic pattern. Nobody's saying they can. Well, that's the definition of Moors. It's you can look it up.
Right.
That's not my term.
Berbers or barbers, even they call them Barbaria.
Yeah, that's actually, they don't even like that term because they consider it insulting.
Right. Be that as it may, that is the historical text that was attached to those people. Of course, we don't like being called African American, but we know that there's a specific set of people here in America that they're talking about when they say that. So I could see them not liking it, but in antiquity, they're Berbers or Barbers. Barbary Coast, the Barbary Wars, all inclusive.
Do you think they deliberately used tribes that migrated from the U.S. to Africa to connect us to them, also known as the Niger, Congo, etc.? I don't. And I don't think we're the same. I mean, I don't think we're the same. They have their own migration stories. I know the people, for example, Ghana, where my dad is from, there's different tribes, and each tribe has their own migration stories, and they're different families. So the Akans will tell you they migrated from the north, and then you have the Aways. They would tell you Aways and the Gans migrated ultimately from Ile Ife, so they're distantly related to the people from the Yoruba people. Then you have other tribes, the northern tribes. They're related to the Mandi speakers out of Mali, and then the Yakans are distantly related to the tribes out of the Gambia as well. They have some distant relations to them as well. So, and everybody, came from different directions. Where did humanity begin? I'm not sure. I think humanity began kind of all over. I don't think it's Africa.
I think that with this conversation, it allows people to be less defensive about having to almost Indianize everything. I mean, I've seen us being in such defense mode that I actually seen people like, I'm gonna just say it, stealing the Hottentot. They stole Sarah Bartman, right? And that part of not maliciously, but wanting to make sure that things come back to their place of origin, so that we can enjoy our culturally connected things that were stripped from us. But I think that this gives people, a better understanding of themselves, because I still notice like there's no reason to have any hostility. For people not knowing exactly what we have come to learn about ourselves, right?
Right.
And it's always going to be teaching moments. We will have to teach people from here on out how to handle us properly. You know what I'm saying? As a result of what it is that we now know. And I just wanted to make sure I say that. So, and you can't assume that everybody knows that we're misclassified Indians in the world. There's going to be tons of pale people that have no idea what we're talking about. Being able to stay cool, calm, and collected and articulate it, you're not going to get the same, you won't have that same feeling of having to defend something. Let me just say, my grandmother always said, the truth don't need no legs to walk and no knees to crawl. It stands on its own if it's true. Thank you, Venus. And it just stands on its own. And now we are able to be confident. So now you'll know how to interpret your DNA test. I know we've had countless arguments with people, giving the wrong information. And especially DNA was kind of like, it definitely wasn't one of our strong points, right? So I used to tell people, hey, if you can't articulate it, don't get into these knockdown, dragged out conversations. Just kind of keep it simple and keep it moving. Right? Especially if you're not able to interpret these things. But Fatou, I want to thank you again, because not only have you making people that were apprehensive about taking DNA feel a little more confident on how to manage what it is that they already have. And even if they decide to take the DNA, now they have things to look for that, will help them, allow them to interpret things for themselves, right? And be able to have that conversation amongst their peers, whether, if they're in debate bowl or just, exchanging information about each other, right? So I just think this is a great opportunity. I really do appreciate you being here, taking your time out to have this conversation so that people are able to better understand the DNA. And, you restored people's confidence back by identifying those factors that, of course, puts us in a position where we're like, okay, so what do they mean by this? Where's this African DNA coming from? And how come these other African people don't have it? Now we have a buffer, a fill-in to know that it's not African at all.
Right.
Right. So I think that also, we don't have to have the who was first in the world. I don't know if science will be able to afford us that specific detail now, or maybe perhaps in the future. But as of now, we now are able to identify ourselves through our own DNA, right? That was submitted. So now people are able to have these conversations, break it down to your family, and also explain it to others. It's fascinating coffee talk, right?
Mm-hmm.
Table discussion to have anyway. But this is also how you can, have these conversations. Now, of course, she did indicate that the genealogy is still paramount and the most important. But now you have an explanation for some things that you see in the records that you couldn't really understand where it's coming from. So hopefully the two will meet up perfectly at some point. But this is a start. This is definitely a start. And from the matches that you're familiar with the North Americans having, that does match that ancient European. That kind of matches what these records are saying, what we know about our ancestors, especially those of us that we know King James and some of these other stewards and tutors and different people that came into the United States and married into our indigenous families. That absolutely proves that there. That makes a lot of sense. And now that's where the records actually match the DNA and the genealogy.
Mm-hmm.
Also, what was interesting was that you explained how some of the people in South America have more of that Mayan Incan, or excuse me, the people in the Caribbean have more Mayan Incan or ancient South American than North Americans do, right?
Yes, I was discussing that with Tyrone. He was sharing with me that it, from his observation, looking at the DNA, I wanted to also share this with the audience. He told me that he noticed that people from the Caribbean had a very similar pattern to the Garifuna samples that he looked at, and that it was very clear to him that they were one in the same. It's just that the Garifuna people, I see Garifuna people like the Seminoles for us, we come basically out of the same group, but they were maroons. You understand? But he was saying that the Garifunas and the Caribbean people are the same people, and he can see that they are their own indigenous people, but they seem to have some different nuance than those of us from North America. Yet we're both indigenous to the Americas. We I'm not saying to quote this, but perhaps we migrated out of South America earlier. I don't know. But we are our own people and they are their own people as well.
That is fascinating.
Yeah. And they have like deeper ties with the South American and the Mesoamericans. We have ties too. So we get hits as well, but they seem genetically, they are, based on what I'm seeing, they're genetically closer. So there's more of an ancient tie. We have more ancient ties to the remains of the people in Europe. We have ancient ties to the people in Mesoamerica and South America, but not like the people in the Caribbean, and vice versa.
It's absolutely fascinating. Did you guys in the chat have any more questions? Definitely, you can ask that. Diaspora L, thanks. This will get pounds of replay value. Paternal grandma 24 years ago said I was Indian after high school graduation, and maternal great aunt with her fourth stage dementia said that we were Indian. Believe them, believe them.
Yeah, I wanted to add, Dr. Fatou, I think you're exactly right about what you said about the migration out of South America. And my family does have oral stories of that, as well as other woodland, Eastern woodland Indian people. They do have family stories of that. Also, there was dealing with the slave trade. A lot of those people from South America were sent to the Caribbean as slaves, so that they have that connection as well with the Mayans. They show proof of Mayans being sent there, as well as people from Brazil. So it's definitely ancient as well as more recent.
Yes.
At DNA.
So Chief Lavelle says some of our Tuscarora people who were enslaved was taken to Nigeria, and I met one about 6 years ago. He's a doctor, 75 years old, and he was taught by his grandparents that they came from America. It's fascinating. It's fascinating. That's his oral story. I wonder how long he had to fight off other Nigerians to maintain what his oral stories are. I can only imagine. Probably not much different than the resistance that we are met with here when we are looking to just clearly express ourselves, not to take away or minimize from anybody else. And I hope people know that we are here to edify all oppressed people. All oppressed people deserve to have the same rights and nationality, culture, and heritage unmolested, unrestricted. And that is irrespective if you are American Indian. Everybody in the world deserves that. And we know for sure that there's certain groups of people that, people are in the way of folks having that. And that's a problem. So if that includes making sure that everybody has access to the information that is going to help liberate them from the oppression, then we, as stewards need to make sure that that information is available. Right. And that's really just what it is. Each one teach one. And that's how, if we all telling the truth, then guess who can't lie on us anymore? We all tell our truths, find our truths, our individual truths. There's another group of people that can no longer lie on us, to us, about us, for us, any of it.
Right. By the way, for Lavelle Pierce, he gave me access to his dad's DNA, and I took a look at that. His father descends from 3 Tuscarora chiefs, and they have a very strong oral history and a paper trail as well. And I noticed with his dad had a significant amount of markers to obviously here, but also to North India, and as well as the Central Asian and the Central Asian area. And one of his ancestors was called Lavelle. I might get this wrong. I think Abraham the Turk, and he was, I believe, his father. He was a chief, but he descended from a Turk, and that showed up on his dad's DNA. Actually, that Central Asian marker. So again, that's an example of someone who's done the genealogy. There's the oral history and the paper trail, and the DNA shows these markers.
Absolutely fascinating. Damien asks, is it possible the tribes in North America migrated to Europe before South American tribes migrated to North America?
I think there were several migrations going on back and forth. I know that many Algonquian people went into Europe, and there were Europeans coming back and forth. Tyrone Lewis Cannon also notes that many of us from North America have tiny Scandinavian markers. I'm sure some of us who have done a 23andMe noticed those tiny Scandinavian percentages. That actually reflects something ancient. We know Vikings were coming back and forth, and North America is not far from Europe. So, we can do other DNA tests. We'll notice tiny markers and matches to Finland, Scandinavia, and those areas, and that's all Viking area. So we were going.
Yeah, I have that ancestry as well, Dr. Fatou, and it comes through my personal ancestry. I can't talk about anybody else. Comes through the Scottish Highlander people because they were originally from that area. They were the Viking people from Scandinavia.
Okay.
And I actually have a family member who has they have a genetic disorder that only people with that Scandinavian ancestry has. So I know it has to be the Scottish line. We don't have Swedish ancestry.
Yeah, we discovered the Vikings a long time ago. That was a jagged pill to swallow, but I'm telling you, once you get to the bottom of it, what are you here for? If you're here for the truth, you're not going to care what you find unless all it is that you find is true. I think that's really what's important. Again, you're still able to insert yourself in the timeline appropriately, and look at what you get to leave behind for your children. We're doing all the work so the grandkids, great-great-grandkids, our great-grandkids, grandkids are not going to have to scramble. They're not going to have to, be embarrassed about, being able to detail and document their history. And I think it's fascinating. And then getting to the bottom of these truths now for the living elders, especially of the misclassified now, this gives them inspiration. We know that they're not crazy. We're vindicating them in real life, real time. And I think that that's super important, right? So some of these things we need to share with the elders. You know what? You was right, Aunt Lucy. Let me tell you, like that brings them joy, right? And it also lets them know that we're listening and we're not as disconnected as society may make us appear to be, because we're busy. We're not always available to spend that much time, but definitely this is stuff that you can share with them, right? And confirm that what they said was true and thank them and show gratitude. You know what I'm saying? Even if they gave you a clue that allowed you to be able to navigate through records, just make sure you love on the people that got you here. The gimme that got you here. Good, bad, and indifferent. It's very important. Let me see. Shout out to Jimmy Freehawk and beloved Sunshine. Please give your wife my love. Sending prayers and everything out there. Love and light to you beautiful people. Hey, John Davis. Hey, Latasha. Hey, Nikki. Always a pleasure when y'all know. Yes. Now, I do know, again, I see Damon says the Vikings came from America. I don't know about that. I know that they were here in their presence. Definitely, there used to be a whole Paleo Mesoamerican page that was up for so many years. And I think we might have broke it, sending people to go and refer because they had a lot of archaeological information. They were talking about the copper mines in Wisconsin and how that they know that those people abruptly stopped working either by some sort of like a bum rush, like a scourge of people, and they had to hightail it out of these different places. Now, I've been to Wisconsin, but nowhere near where these copper mines used to be. All I know is that website is now gone. They had a lot of different artifacts that you did not see in the museum, and it was completely dedicated to Paleo and Mesoamerica. North America at that, not the Caribbean. This was literally here. And they talked about the Vikings going into Wisconsin and Minnesota and some of the northern territories and also in Nova Scotia. And it also indicated Greenland and a lot of things, lesser known facts about Greenland, namely being Greenland is a part of America, whether we know it or not. It's actually a part of America. The same as South and Central and the Caribbean as well. So, but the site has been down for quite some time. It was super unique, and I'm talking, it was so old that at the bottom, when it tells you how many people visited this page, like it would show the last visitor. And then when I came across it was probably like 2016, but the last visitor before me was like a year and a half prior to that. So once we started sharing, sending the screenshots and using this in debate modes and shit like that, that whole website came down. And I still haven't seen anything comparable like that, that detailed it. And of course, I would say that it was an unbiased person, because they had pale indigenous people and dark ones. It was a non-biased page that completely got taken down. And I think it was because it gave too much information about the Eastern Woodlands. I think that's what it was. See, it's different when you speak about, you know, more of the people on the West Coast. But when you get into American Indians and you start talking about Eastern Woodlands, people like to act like they never existed at all. I also see that someone asked, where to go? Question. Oh, this is a comment. Mike Easton said a lot of people don't realize that your smallest number is your original self. I'm assuming speaking about with the DNA test.
Sort of, kind of.
Now, Justin Booker says after doing my DNA test, he's pretty sure East Asians and South Asians from India who crossed back and forth over the Bering Strait met our Aboriginal ancestors. Now, I could say this, Justin, as it turns out, they have science, live science themselves have completely done away with the Bering Strait. They've completely said that it didn't happen, that land bridge never existed, kind of thing. Those are the more modern studies on that. So I don't know if you've seen anything different, but just so you know, check on that Bering Strait thing. Those people were probably not okay that was spitting that theory. They're not okay.
But you know, we match some of those Russians who are far up in those regions.
Yes.
We do match those Russians. If anyone plays with their Jed match kits, you'll see a lot of those Chuvash and some of those Russian tribes. I can't pronounce their names, ethnic groups, I should say. We match a lot of those Russian groups, and some of them are quite far up there.
So would you consider them the Siberians?
I don't think they're Siberians. I think Siberians are a different group, but we match them too. We are, if you look at a lot of our Jed match, we have in our secondary populations, even the Aleut people, who are type of Eskimo people. We match all of those people.
That's Taraji Henson's people. That's who Matthew Henson, who allegedly discovered the North Pole, he married an Inuit woman. I don't know if people know that's Taraji P. Henson's fourth great uncle, Matthew Henson is. And
Right.
she has that Inuit look, right?
But no, Taraji's actually, let me tell you something. Taraji and I share cousins. I can't say I'm related to her, but we share cousins. Taraji's grandmother's actually still down there in Scotland Neck, North Carolina, where my mother's from. Taraji's mom went to the same high school as my mom and my uncles and aunts. Her people actually, let me see, the surname, what is that? It's a Ballard. Her mother comes from the Ballards.
I know who the Ballards are too. And the Ballards also come from Virginia, North Carolina. That's right.
Yeah, exactly. So I can tell you that those are her people. She definitely is very related to the people out there in Northeast North Carolina and Southeast Virginia. So
Yeah, those Hensons are from Maryland too. They have some
Yes,
Piscataway and
yeah,
Nanticoke ancestry.
right.
that's right. And our beloved Dean Bean is related to the Hensons.
Hmm.
Super interesting. Well, did you guys have any last words before we wrap up? Fatou, I'm so thankful for you. You just don't know. I'm smiling from the inside. I appreciate you so much. You know you could come back anytime you want to dump this DNA stuff on the rest of us. Anytime.
Oh, thank you, thank you. I look forward to.
You could get brother Tyrone here. That would be amazing. At any point in time, you guys are welcome. Gematria, he can come back as well. Whatever it takes, you are always welcome here. I thank you so much. And I'm sure the people thank you too. Shout out to Carameo. He's in there. Pura vida. I believe that's pure life, right? I think that's what that is. I got to be close. I know vida is life. So thank you for that comment. Fatou, I appreciate you. I'm so glad you came. Did you have any closing comments before we end the show?
Um, just, I mean, I'm pretty much going to reiterate what I keep saying. That we're not trying to use DNA uh, to establish who we are, but just to show and prove that the DNA, regardless of the intent behind those who create these oracles, we're showing how the DNA, even with the intention to trick us, still shows we were here from ancient times. Okay? And it's really just about moving backwards. If you study the timeline and you look at all the ancient migrations, you have the Saneterian, talking about the Europeans coming here. We also went into Europe and we mixed with the ancient Europeans, and there was a back and forth. All of this is what I'm showing. And then we had the Austronesians coming in, and we have their markers, and they were the earliest seafarers. And you have the people out in the Caribbean matching the ancient sites in South America with close genetic. They have close genetic matches, so it shows there was a lot of intermixing with those people in South America and Mesoamerica. So, I mean, I'm just here to basically show and prove that the history matches the DNA, despite the fact that they like to mislabel us. That's all.
Thank you so much for that. Tasha, you got any last words, cousin? Thank you so much. You're such a gracious, beautiful host. Thank you.
Thank you, Beauty. I just wanted to say thank you again, Dr. Fatou. Like you really, like in the past couple of years, you really been opening up a lot of information for us and bringing in academia and your specialties as a physician, and we really appreciate you and all the hard work you've done. Same as with Tyrone Lewis Cannon as well. So I really appreciate you too. And of course, I love you, Phoenix. Thank you so much for bringing me on as co-host, Phoenix.
And I thank you, ladies, as well. Thank you for having me. And also thank you for all your hard work with all your dedication to our people. I know it's not always easy, but I appreciate it. And a lot of us appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Well, you know what the time it is, y'all. And I just want to tell y'all, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. And if not us, then who? And if not now, then when? You are loved, beloved people in Indian country. Chapisalachi K.